Hey, everybody. Welcome to another great interview here on Sharing Hope. I'm your host today, Michael DiMuccio, and joining me is financial blogger and the founder of Inspired Budget, Allison Baggerly. So let's talk about Allison's journey a little bit. She created Inspired Budget back in 2011. That was when her and her husband faced over $100,000 in debt as a newly married couple. She then got very busy researching everything she could. And from the knowledge she gained, they were able to pay off that debt. And additionally, several surgeries along the way. From there, Inspired Budget was launched, and her blogs have gotten a lot of traffic, as well as her personal social media platforms. She's also been featured on other platforms, names you may have heard of, Forbes, NerdWallet, Epic Times, Boss Mom. Her desire is simply to equip her readers with tips and tools to help them face their financial fears and be more in control and more prepared for their financial futures. So with that, Allison, welcome to Sharing Hope.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to share some hope with your viewers today.
So how's it been going?
So it has been interesting. I work from home normally, and so I've really gotten used to it being a little bit quiet. And so now with everyone home, it's sometimes hard for me to focus on my work, but I've really just enjoyed some of this extra family time that was built in, just not something that I asked for, but something that ultimately I am actually pretty grateful for.
Very good. So now take us through the journey. I didn't want to take or steal a whole lot of your thunder in my intro, but here you were back in 2011, you're married, you're facing student loans, car loans, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of give us the highway into that time and then the highway out.
We realized that we could not even afford, with the way we were living and the way we were spending our money, we could not afford daycare payments. And as two teachers, there was no way that I could be a stay-at-home mom. We couldn't afford that. And so it was really hard. I felt a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, because that's whenever my husband and I really realized that not only was all of this debt just bringing us down, but our spending habits did not reflect the family that we wanted to raise. They were not reflecting the people we wanted to be. We did not feel responsible. And so, and even though people told us it was impossible, I knew that we were capable of achieving and reaching a goal that others say is too hard, others say is silly. And so we did the work. We learned how to write a budget. It was not easy. It was so difficult at times. But we learned how to write a budget. We learned how to stick to a budget, and we learned how to ultimately say no to things in the moment so that we could say yes to our future.
Wow, that's great. And it's funny, you're taking me back to a time where I was personally challenged. I had a surgery, and I was like, oh my goodness, am I ever going to pay this off? But at the time, I wasn't even working consistently. And so it was really difficult. But I know that from things I've gleaned from you, you had some surgeries to pay for along the way here in season already. So talk a little bit about that part of the journey.
Well, we had different things come up. I gave birth twice, which, we didn't know that we didn't know anything about negotiating bills. We didn't know anything about our insurance. So I had two C-sections. My son had to have a surgery along the way, and it's daunting. It is overwhelming to get those medical bills that flood into your mailbox. And you just think, number one, it's so hard to process. Number two, you're thankful that you are healthy, but then you also feel this frustration.
Wow. But now it's interesting. You talk about that stress and that burden, but that served in a sense to fuel you to get answers,
Yes.
A, how did you pay for the surgeries? B, where did you start looking to get this, what eventually became Inspired Budget?
Well, first I looked at negotiating the bills. I looked at, we had to deplete our emergency fund. And in that moment, I was so thankful that we had an emergency fund, because most people don't. Most people don't have enough money to cover these incredible medical costs that are unexpected. And in the process of paying off debt, in the process of learning how to budget, I learned that I actually have a passion for this, and I was able to take that passion for helping others and combine it with my talent of teaching, because I was a teacher for 10 years, and bring it together to form Inspired Budget to help people who were in the exact same position I was in over 8 years ago when we were in debt, whenever we didn't know what to do and I needed motivation and I needed guidance, but I couldn't find it. I'm able to give answers to people who have questions about how to lower different costs in their budget, such as home insurance, car insurance, health insurance. I'm able to give that knowledge that I've learned over time and truly make a difference.
Nice, nice. Now, it's funny. You mentioned something that I've heard many financial advisors say, and that is having this kind of safety savings, if you will, emergency funds. What's a good rule of thumb when you're planning an emergency fund? I know for everybody it's different based on needs, but what would be some rules of thumb in saying, base that amount of what your goal should be on other factors in that, or what do you put into that?
So what I say is look at your baseline expenses. We're not talking things like Netflix and Hulu. We're not talking about Amazon Prime. Those things you can get rid of in case of an emergency, in case you do lose your job, in case you do have these crazy expenses that come up. Look at your baseline. What do you need to live and survive on? And I say multiply that by anywhere between 3 and 6 and have that be your goal. And if anything has taught us is that it is so important to have that, just learning from this pandemic, to have that in savings that you're not touching. And I know some people will put that money in savings and they'll say, well, no, I want to send it to debt, but this life is so unpredictable and you never know what can happen. And so having that safety net, that peace of mind, can help you sleep more soundly at night. It can help take away any money-related anxieties that you have. And it can just honestly even help a marriage, because you're able to communicate better about finances because you're no longer worried and stressed and anxious because you know you have that safety net.
That's good. It's very good. Now, for those in this, say, Corona season, if you will, that maybe don't have as much, I'd imagine on your blogs, you're answering a lot of questions of people that are kind of in despair or borderline, or they don't know what to do. What are some of the biggest FAQs that you're getting, or some of the biggest struggles that people are communicating to you during this time?
I'm getting a lot of people that are asking me just about how much they need in their emergency fund, which is what we just talked about. I'm getting a lot of people that are asking me, do I save money or do I send it to debt? What is it that I do? What do I prioritize? And if anything this season has taught us is prioritize your savings first. You can send that money to debt later if you need to. I've also had a lot of people talk to me about struggling with impulse spending online. They are at home, they are bored, they are struggling with sending money away that they're not supposed to be spending on other things. And then I'm also getting people asking me how to cut back in their expenses, and not just cut back on coffee or restaurants, but what are some of those bigger things that you can do to make a difference in your budget and see more cash flow every month so that you can save more money?
Sure. And what are some of those bigger things that you're getting? Is it, like you mentioned a little earlier, is it things like Netflix? What are some of the kind of the big zappers of money in people's lives that you're seeing?
So what I say doing is go to your expenses, print off your bank statement, and highlight every recurring expense. And I want you to think outside of the box, outside of canceling Netflix, outside of, no longer going get coffee. I want you to look at your bills, your big bills that you have, such as your car insurance, your home insurance. And I want you to call and shop around, negotiate for that. One of the biggest ways we were able to save money is by switching to Medishare. I mean, we saved so much money because it would have been so expensive for me to join my husband's insurance that we were able to save $600 a month by switching to Medishare. And it's been such a wonderful experience. So those savings can add up. And so consider shopping around, calling and negotiating for prices, trying out something that maybe you hadn't been willing to try before, because you can live the same life that you're living now and still save hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month by looking at those recurring bills and expenses that oftentimes people overlook.
Sure. And I would imagine, just like any company, whether you're calling a car insurance company or have you, they're all experiencing a hit too. So negotiating, do you find that's easier now?
Oh my goodness, yes, because they would rather keep your business. Ultimately, it is cheaper for them to keep you on than to find a new customer. So they want to make you happy. So do not ever feel bad about calling in and saying, look, we're stressed financially. What can you do to me? How can we work together so that I can continue to pay my bill to you? I want to pay my bill every single month, and I want to work with you to make sure that happens. And when you approach them like that, they are going to be more willing to work with you, to talk to someone higher up, to figure out a situation so that way they can keep you as a customer, and that way you can continue making your payments and not get behind.
That's good. That's very good. Give our viewers like some tips and tools. Maybe start with where you started researching in that real crunch that you felt, that 111,000 plus debt, and then maybe transition into how do they negotiate? I think a lot of people think once they, receive a notification of an amount, oh no, I'm stuck, I'm handcuffed, maybe go from where to start looking for tips and then transition into how do people negotiate with these companies? Give them a little angle on what you learned.
So what I learned, and there's not as much out there on the internet as you think there are, what I learned is that if you call them and you have a set script that you say, that a lot of times they're going to be willing to work with you. So for instance, I learned that if you call and you just say, hey, this is my situation, this is what I can pay you now in cash and get caught up, is there any way you can work with me? Sometimes they will say yes, sometimes they'll try to put you on a payment plan, but I've also learned that if you call and you try to speak to someone up, if you try to ask for a manager, or if you're working with a doctor's office, sometimes they have these third-party billing companies. Sometimes you can call the office manager of different places and they will be willing to negotiate with you, whereas these third-party billing companies will not. And my biggest tip for you is that if they say no, that does not mean that you're not going to be able to negotiate or pay less. What I say is okay, thank you for your time, hang up, wait a couple of days and try again. Because the more often you try, the more willing that they're going to be able to see, okay, this person is serious about this. They're willing to negotiate. This is their situation. And it doesn't hurt to ask, and it doesn't hurt to wait and let them wait as well, to show them that you're serious about wanting to lower these expenses.
That's good. So as a rule of thumb, then, you're looking at what your insurances, whether that's auto, whether that's health, life, or what are some other kind of big balloons as you go through those recurring costs on your bank statement? People that say are renting versus owning homes, what do you look at?
I'm sorry?
What are those renting versus those that have a mortgage payment?
Okay.
Go into a little bit of that if you can.
So I would definitely say, look at any of your renter's insurance. Renter's insurance is very inexpensive. You can always shop around, go back to your current company and say, hey, I found this price. Will you honor it? Otherwise, I'm going to leave your company and go somewhere else. I would also look at things like your cable bills, your cell phone bills. So there are so many smaller cell phone companies that are just as great as the big name brand companies, and it might be time to change. And normally you can bring your own phone on with you as long as it's paid off.
Good. That's good insight. Very good insight. Now, uh, forgive me if I'm a little biased with this question, but you mentioned earlier your son had a surgery, and then you obviously
Mhm.
mentioned being with Medishare. Were you with Medishare at the time of the surgery?
So we were not with Metashare.
Oh, at that
And,
time, gotcha.
you know, at that time, we were not with Medishare, and we had thought about Medishare. So my husband and I were both teachers, and in Texas, our insurance is very, very expensive. And to be honest with you, it's not that great. We had this high deductible plan. We were paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars every single month for both of us and our family. And there were times whenever, for 2 full years, my husband had said, I've heard of this company. I've heard of this company. I think we should try them. And it was scary. It was scary because it was unfamiliar. And every summer we would do more research, but we didn't know someone personally that had used Medishare. But we were so close. We were so close to joining. And I will never forget sitting at home. The kids were playing in the living room, and my husband and I had a stack of bills on the kitchen table. And it was all of these bills, hundreds and hundreds, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of bills coming in, flooding our inbox. And we had just finished paying off debt, and we had just finished setting up an emergency fund. And we had felt like we had really made progress on our financial journey. And I just remember sitting there with tears in my eyes and saying, I wonder what this would be like if we had decided to get on Medishare earlier in the year, if we had gone through with it, because we ended up draining our emergency fund to stay afloat. Thankfully, we did not go into debt to pay for our medical bills. However, it was very close. We could have. And I know that we were blessed in the sense that we had built up that savings, but I also know that some people aren't. And that the payments that we had to make, people would have had to go into debt for, or set up these year-long payment plans, several years. And I remember saying, what would it have been like? And I'm pretty sure my husband was like, I told you so. But it was hard. It was tough. And it made our decision to switch easier. Because I know that not only would it have been easier for us to cover those bills, but we would have also had people praying for us, even more people praying for our son and for our family during that time.
Wow. Yeah. And I can speak from experience. Something that you said is that, it was new. It was kind of that the unknown. And whether it's calling a creditor and negotiating, or whether it's switching into something that maybe you haven't heard of, or like you said, mentioning a new cell phone provider, might not be the name, but it's useful and it's going to save you money. We've got to get out of our comfort zones.
Yes.
It's funny. Forgive me. The preacher in me is coming out. I was thinking of David and Goliath when I was thinking of your testimony, and I was like, here you were kind of like a David. All you had was like a slingshot, but you were like, I'm determined. I'm going to take the giant of debt. And then you take the giant sword and cut its head off with it. Now you're helping others. So talk.
Oh, that is so cool. I never thought of it like that. I love it.
Well, can you disclose any new projects that you might be working on, or some blogs that you've just finished up?
Well, I am currently working on completely revamping and reworking my Inspired Budget Inner Circle, which is a monthly membership where I help people learn how to budget, learn how to pay off debt, and how to save money. And it's those people that need an extra accountability along the way. They need just step-by-step guides on how to become an expert in their finances, because they feel stuck, they feel lost. A lot of times people think, I make enough money. Why don't I have any left? Why am I in this situation? And so I help them change their money mindset, look at their finances differently, develop a healthy relationship with money and saving money, and just completely change their financial future. And it's essentially what I wished I would have had over 8 years ago when I was walking through this journey. I want to be able to be the support to people that I wish I had in that moment, because there are times when it gets so tough and you want to quit and you don't want to pay debt anymore because you're just tired of it and you want to go on that vacation, you want to spend money. However, the reward at the end is worth it. So that is my goal, is to get people to the end and the reward of being a better manager of their personal finances.
Sure. Yeah. A friend of mine used to say a budget is not to restrict you. A budget basically is you telling your money what to do. So
yes,
whether you're investing it, whether you're spending it, or cutting back on this or that, it's really giving you, like you said, more freedom and then the reward of going on, say, that vacation or buying that thing that you've wanted for so long.
That's so true.
yeah, and you've lived it. So, what are you doing as far in terms of education now? Have you been doing a lot of? Well, your kids are young, so you're probably not having to really homeschool them or anything at this point yet, or are you finding outlets for the education side of you?
I am, actually. So my son, my oldest son is going into 3rd grade and my youngest son is about to go into kindergarten. So the moment that we started at home learning, I was like, oh my gosh, I get to get all the worksheets. I'm going to print everything and we're going to learn how to read. And so we're still working. We're still requiring daily teaching. However, I'm a teacher, or I was a teacher, but I'm still technically a teacher. If you think about it, my husband is a teacher. So our kids have 2 teachers for parents. And so they get a lot of school, more school than some other kids might be getting, just because it's our joy and it's our passion.
That's awesome. Yeah, they get the double blessing.
Yes. And they might not see it as a blessing now, but one day they will.
That's right. That's right. Well, where can our viewers, Allison, find more of your blogs, material, or social media? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, you can easily find me at inspiredbudget.com, and that's where I have all of my resources, all of my tips, all of my free information. And then also, I'd love for them to follow me on social media, on Instagram at Inspired Budget. I'm there every single day giving tips, giving tricks, helpful information, and also sharing a little bit of behind the scenes of our family's life.
Wow. Well, I'm going to encourage our viewers, go to inspiredbudget.com, and that is the hub where you can get lots of material. And I'm sure you've already been equipped just even in listening to Allison share her passion. So Allison, at this time, I just want to thank you. I'm glad you were able to carve out some time and offer, your heart, your passion, your research, and thank you for sharing hope.
Well, thank you, Michael, for having me. It is my absolute pleasure to be here today.